You've been told bottled water is pure, clean, and safer than tap. The labels show pristine mountains, untouched springs, and crystal-clear streams that make you feel like every sip is straight from nature itself. But what if the plastic bottle you just paid $3 for contains the same water that flows from your kitchen sink? Or worse, what if it's laced with microplastics, bacteria, and chemicals that could make tap water look like a health tonic? Before you take another sip, you might want to hear what the bottled water industry has been hiding in plain sight. Americans spend over $16 billion every single year on bottled water. That's billion with a B. We've been convinced that paying 1,000 times more for water in a plastic container is somehow smarter, healthier, and more responsible than turning on a faucet. Some of the most trusted names in bottled water have faced recalls, lawsuits, and contamination scandals that would make you spit out your drink if you knew the details. By the end of this video, you'll never look at bottled water the same way. We're going to crack open 5 major categories of bottled water, from the budget brands at Walmart to the $5 luxury options that promise glacier purity. Each one has secrets that range from disappointing to downright dangerous. Some are selling you tap water and calling it spring water. Others have contamination histories that would shock you. And the so-called premium brands? They might be the biggest scam of all. So if you've ever wondered whether that bottled water is really worth it, or if you've noticed a weird taste and brushed it off, this is for you. Drop a comment and let us know which brand you drink most often, or if you've ever gotten sick from bottled water and didn't realize why. Hit that like button if you're ready to question everything you thought you knew about hydration. And subscribe, because we're about to pour out some truths the industry desperately wants to keep bottled up. Let's start with one of the biggest names in the business, a brand owned by Pepsi that's been pulling off one of the most profitable cons in consumer history. Aquafina sounds exotic, refreshing, pure. The label shows pristine mountains and crystal-clear streams. The marketing suggests some untouched natural source, bottled at the peak of perfection. But here's what Pepsi doesn't want you to know. Aquafina is literally just public tap water, filtered and marked up by over 2,000%. That's not an exaggeration. It's right there on the label if you know where to look. PWS, Public Water Source. Translation: the same water that flows through pipes in your city, treated at a municipal facility, and sold back to you in a plastic bottle for $1.50. Let's break down the math. Tap water costs less than 1 cent per gallon in most American cities. A bottle of Aquafina contains about 16 ounces, which is 1/8 of a gallon, so you're paying between $1 and $2 for water that costs a fraction of a penny to produce. The only difference is that Pepsi runs it through a reverse osmosis filtration system, which sounds impressive until you realize many home fridge filters do the exact same thing. But it gets worse. Independent studies have found microplastic particles in Aquafina samples at rates that should alarm anyone who drinks it regularly. A study by the State University of New York tested 11 different bottled water brands and found an average of 325 microplastic particles per liter. Aquafina was among the brands tested. These aren't just harmless flecks. Microplastics can carry toxic chemicals like BPA and phthalates, which have been linked to hormone disruption, reproductive issues, and increased cancer risk. So, not only are you paying a massive markup for tap water, you're also getting a bonus dose of plastic particles that weren't there when the water left the treatment plant. Consumers have noticed. One viral post from a few years ago showed a side-by-side comparison. Someone filled a glass with tap water and poured Aquafina into another glass. Under a basic microscope, both showed similar mineral content. The only visible difference? The Aquafina sample had tiny floating particles. The caption read, "I've been scammed." The comments were ruthless. One person wrote, "Congrats, you paid $2 for privilege water." Another said, "Aquafina is just tap water that went to private school." The jokes write themselves, but the underlying issue is serious. Pepsi's defense has always been that they never explicitly claimed it was spring water. Technically true. But the marketing does everything possible to create that illusion without legally crossing the line. It's the bottled water equivalent of fine print deception. And while Aquafina meets federal safety standards for bottled water, those standards are actually less strict than the regulations for public tap water in many cities. The Environmental Protection Agency regulates tap water. The Food and Drug Administration regulates bottled water. The EPA requires more frequent testing, stricter contamination limits, and public disclosure of quality reports. The FDA? Not so much. So in some cases, the tap water Pepsi starts with is actually more closely monitored before they bottle it than after. Here's the real kicker. Aquafina's plastic bottles are made from polyethylene terephthalate, also known as PET. When exposed to heat or sunlight, PET can leach chemicals into the water. Ever left a bottled water in your car on a hot day and noticed it tastes weird? So, you're paying premium prices for municipal tap water, drinking microplastics, and potentially consuming chemicals from the bottle itself. Aquafina isn't hydration. It's a con job with a barcode. But at least Pepsi admits it's tap water, even if they bury the admission in tiny letters. Our next brand tried to hide it and ended up in a scandal so bad an entire country banned it. Let's talk about Coca-Cola's Dasani and the formula that failed spectacularly. In 2004, Coca-Cola had to recall every single bottle of Dasani in the United Kingdom after it was discovered their purification process actually added illegal levels of a carcinogenic chemical. 500,000 bottles pulled from shelves. A national embarrassment so severe that Dasani never returned to the UK market, and yet, Americans still drink millions of bottles every single day, completely unaware that the brand they trust was essentially banned in another country for contamination. If that doesn't make you pause mid-sip, nothing will. Here's what happened. Coca-Cola launched Dasani in the UK with the same formula they use in the United States. Tap water from the Thames water supply, run through reverse osmosis, then remineralized with a blend of calcium chloride, magnesium sulfate, and potassium bicarbonate. Sounds scientific and pure, right? Except during that remineralization process, something went wrong. The added calcium interacted with the ozone disinfection system and produced bromate, a chemical compound classified as a potential carcinogen. Bromate levels in some bottles exceeded the legal limit, not by a little. By enough that UK regulators pulled the product immediately, and Coca-Cola faced a public relations disaster that made international headlines. The truly wild part? Coca-Cola never actually fixed the core issue in the United States. They adjusted the formula slightly to avoid bromate formation, but Dasani is still fundamentally the same product. Consumer complaints have been piling up for years. People report stomach issues, headaches, and a strange aftertaste that lingers. One viral TikTok video showed someone doing a taste test between Dasani, tap water, and another bottled brand. The creator took one sip of Dasani, made a face like they'd just licked a battery, and said, "This tastes like a swimming pool had a baby with a penny." The video got millions of views and thousands of comments from people agreeing. The jokes are brutal, but they point to a real problem. When your bottled water tastes worse than tap, something is seriously wrong. Then there's the plastic issue, which Dasani shares with every other bottled water brand. The bottles are made from the same PET plastic that leaches chemicals when exposed to heat or sunlight. Ever notice how a Dasani bottle crinkles and collapses the moment you take a few sips? Dasani's bottles are notoriously thin and flimsy. They're designed to use less plastic to cut costs, which means they're even more prone to deformation and chemical leaching. And when that plastic degrades, guess where those chemicals go? Straight into the water you're drinking. The UK banned Dasani and never looked back. The rest of Europe barely stocks it, but in America, it remains one of the top-selling bottled water brands, available in every gas station, vending machine, and convenience store from coast to coast. But what happens when a corporation drains entire communities to bottle water, pays almost nothing for it, then sells it back at prices so inflated it makes highway robbery look reasonable? Welcome to Nestlé, where stealing water and selling contamination is just good business. Nestlé has been draining natural springs in drought-stricken areas, paying almost nothing for millions of gallons, then selling it back to you at a markup so obscene it makes robbery look fair. And that's before we talk about the arsenic. In California, while residents faced mandatory water restrictions and brown lawns became the norm, Nestlé continued pumping water from national forest land using a permit that expired in 1988. Let that sink in. They operated for decades on an expired permit, extracting over 36 million gallons a year, paying around $524 in annual fees. That's roughly 1/1,000th of a cent per gallon. But the exploitation is only part of the story. Nestlé Pure Life, one of their flagship brands, has faced multiple recalls for contamination. In 2015, Nestlé recalled bottles due to potential E. coli contamination traced back to a spring source in Pennsylvania. E. coli, the bacteria most commonly associated with fecal matter. Nothing says pure life like drinking water that might contain traces of sewage. The recall affected multiple states, but the quiet handling meant most consumers never even knew it happened. No massive news coverage. No dramatic press conferences. Just a silent pull from shelves and a hope that nobody would notice or care enough to ask questions. Then there's the arsenic issue. Independent testing has found measurable levels of arsenic in Nestlé bottled water products. Arsenic is a naturally occurring element, yes, but it's also a known carcinogen linked to cancer, cardiovascular disease, and developmental issues in children. The FDA allows up to 10 parts per billion in bottled water. Some Nestlé products have tested at levels approaching that limit. For context, the World Health Organization recommends even stricter limits. So, while Nestlé can technically claim they meet U.S. standards, they're skating right up to the legal edge of acceptable poison. When your defense is barely legal levels of arsenic, maybe it's time to rethink the whole operation. Let's talk about the infamous CEO quote. In 2005, Nestlé's then chairman Peter Brabeck stated that water is not a human right and should be treated like any other foodstuff with a market value. The backlash was immediate and global. Activists rightfully pointed out that a corporation making billions from water was arguing that access to water shouldn't be a guaranteed right. The quote became a rallying cry against Nestlé's business practices. Documentaries featured it, protests cited it, social media roasted it endlessly. One viral meme showed a Nestlé water bottle with the caption, "I'll take your human rights and sell them back to you for $3. Harsh, but not inaccurate. Communities in Michigan, California, and other states have fought legal battles against Nestlé's extraction operations. Residents watch their wells run dry while trucks haul millions of gallons away to be bottled and sold. Environmental groups have documented stream levels dropping, ecosystems suffering, and local water supplies strained. And the worst part? Most people drinking Nestlé Pure Life have no idea where it came from or what it cost the communities left behind. So, when you reach for that bottle of Nestlé water, you're funding a system that extracts public resources for private profit, contaminates products with everything from bacteria to microplastics, and operates under the philosophy that water is a commodity, not a right. But maybe you're thinking, forget the big names. I'll just buy the cheap store brand. Surely generic water from Walmart or Costco is simpler, safer, and more transparent. If that's your plan, you might want to sit down for this next part. That 24-pack of store-brand water for $3 at Walmart seems like a smart choice, until you realize you're buying inconsistently sourced water with almost zero quality oversight, packaged in the cheapest plastic available. Store brands like Great Value, Kirkland Signature, and Kroger's House Label promise the same hydration as name brands at a fraction of the cost. But here's what they don't tell you. The water in those bottles can come from completely different sources depending on which region you're buying from. The label might say the same thing, but the water inside could be from a spring in one state, a municipal source in another, or a well that barely passed inspection in a third. It's a geographical lottery where the prize is questionable hydration. The plastic used in store brand bottles is noticeably thinner than premium brands. Hold a Great Value bottle next to a Fiji bottle, and you can feel the difference immediately. That thin plastic isn't just flimsy. It's more prone to chemical leaching. Studies have shown that cheaper PET plastic releases higher concentrations of antimony and other compounds, especially when exposed to heat. So, that case of water you left in your trunk after a Costco run? Every bottle is essentially marinating in its own chemical soup. The longer it sits, the worse it gets. By the time you drink it, you're getting water, plus a bonus dose of whatever leached out of the container. Recall history for store brands tells a troubling story. In 2020, Whole Foods recalled their Starkey water brand due to potential contamination. In 2018, multiple Walmart Great Value water products were pulled after reports of strange odors and particles. Kroger's brand has faced similar issues. The problem is that these recalls often fly under the radar. When Dasani or Aquafina gets recalled, it makes headlines. When a store brand gets pulled, it's handled quietly. A small notice on a website, an email to loyalty program members, maybe a sign at the customer service desk. Most shoppers never even know it happened. They just notice the shelf is empty one week and assume it's sold out. Consumer complaints about store brand water are shockingly common. People report cloudy water, visible particles floating in bottles, chemical tastes, and plastic smells so strong it's like drinking from a gas can. One viral Reddit post showed a Kirkland water bottle with what looked like mold growing inside. The thread exploded with similar stories. Someone shared a photo of their Great Value water with a black speck suspended in the middle. Another person described opening a fresh bottle that smelled like rotten eggs. The comments ranged from disgusted to darkly humorous. One user wrote, "I paid $3 for 24 bottles and somehow still got ripped off." Another said, "At this point, I'm just building immunity to whatever's in there." The storage and transportation conditions for store brand water are another major concern. These pallets of water sit in warehouses that aren't climate controlled. They're loaded onto trucks that bake in the sun during summer deliveries. They're stacked in storage rooms at the back of stores, where temperatures fluctuate wildly. Plastic bottles are not designed to withstand prolonged heat exposure. When they do, the plastic degrades faster, and chemical leaching accelerates. That $3 bargain starts looking a lot less appealing when you realize it's been slow cooking in a semi-truck for 3 days during a cross-country haul in July. Here's the part that should really concern you. Bottled water technically has an expiration date, usually 1 to 2 years from bottling, but that date has nothing to do with the water going bad. Water doesn't spoil. The date reflects when the plastic container is expected to start breaking down and contaminating the contents. So when you see those clearance pallets of store brand water with dates approaching expiration, what you're really seeing is plastic that's about to hit peak degradation. Stores know this. They discount it to move inventory fast, and consumers think they're getting a deal when really they're getting water that's been sitting long enough for the bottle to start dissolving into it. So, store brands offer inconsistency, questionable sourcing, minimal oversight, cheap plastic, poor storage conditions, and contamination risks that rival or exceed the name brands they're trying to undercut. Not exactly the value proposition they advertise, but maybe premium brands are different. Maybe when you pay 5 times more for water from Fiji or France, you're actually getting something pure and worth the cost. Spoiler alert, you're not. Let's talk about luxury water and why expensive doesn't mean clean. You paid $5 for that bottle of Fiji water because the label promised untouched aquifer water from a tropical paradise. The marketing shows lush rainforests, pristine islands, and water so pure it supposedly never touches the surface of the earth. But independent testing found arsenic, microplastics, and a carbon footprint so massive it takes 3 liters of water just to produce and ship 1 liter of Fiji. Let's start with the arsenic. Testing by the Cleveland-based analytics firm revealed that Fiji water contained 6.3 micrograms of arsenic per liter. For comparison, tap water from Cleveland contained none. The legal limit is 10 micrograms, so Fiji is technically compliant. But here's what most people don't know. Arsenic accumulates in the body over time. Chronic exposure has been linked to cancer, cardiovascular disease, and neurological damage. So every time you treat yourself to that expensive Fiji bottle, you're also treating yourself to a trace dose of poison. At $5 a pop, you deserve better than barely legal arsenic levels. Then there's the environmental cost. The water is bottled in Fiji, a remote island nation in the South Pacific, then shipped thousands of miles to reach American consumers. The carbon footprint of transporting millions of bottles across the ocean by cargo ship, then by truck to distribution centers, then to stores, is staggering. Environmental groups estimate that it takes roughly 3 liters of water to produce the plastic bottle, process the water, and power the transportation for just 1 liter of Fiji water to reach your hand. The irony is almost impressive. Evian, the French Alps water that costs nearly as much as gasoline, has its own dirty secret: microplastics. The same Orb Media study that exposed Nestlé found microplastic contamination in Evian bottles. Premium pricing doesn't protect you from plastic particles. In fact, some luxury brands showed contamination rates on par with budget options. The fancy glass-like bottle design might look elegant on your desk, but inside, it's the same microplastic lottery as everything else. Smart Water, owned by Coca-Cola and endorsed by celebrities like Jennifer Aniston, markets itself as vapor distilled with added electrolytes for taste. Sounds high-tech and healthy. Here's the reality. It's distilled tap water. The vapor distillation process does remove impurities, but it also strips all minerals, leaving it essentially blank. Then they add back electrolytes, which are just minerals like calcium chloride and magnesium chloride. It's tap water with extra steps and a celebrity face attached. The electrolytes provide negligible health benefits. You'd get more from eating a banana. The plastic problem applies equally across all price points. Whether you pay $1 or $5, you're drinking from a PET plastic container that leaches chemicals. Premium brands often use slightly thicker plastic or fancy bottle shapes, but the material is fundamentally the same. BPA-free doesn't mean safe. It just means they replaced one problematic chemical with others that haven't been studied as extensively. When that Fiji bottle sits in a hot warehouse or a delivery truck in summer, the plastic degrades and contaminates the water inside, just like any cheap store brand. The only difference is you paid 5 times more for the privilege. Here's what really stings. The premium water industry relies on psychological manipulation. They've convinced millions of people that water from Fiji tastes better because it comes from far away. That French Alps water is purer because it's European. That vapor distillation is somehow superior to regular filtration. It's all marketing theater. Celebrity endorsements make it worse. When you see a famous face holding a Smart Water bottle, your brain associates that brand with success, beauty, health. But those celebrities are paid millions to hold that bottle. So, where does that leave us? We've torn through budget brands, major names, exploitative corporations, store generics, and luxury options. Every category has the same problems. It's time to face the uncomfortable truth: your tap might actually be safer. Some people will watch this video and immediately switch to filtered tap water and reusable bottles. Others will feel overwhelmed and continue buying bottled water because change feels too difficult. And some will rationalize that the risks are overblown or that they'll deal with it later. That's human nature. But here's what you need to understand. The bottled water you're drinking is not what you think it is. It's not cleaner. It's not safer. It's not worth the price. And every day you continue buying it, you're funding an industry that profits from your misinformation while contributing to a global health and environmental crisis that will outlive us all. So what are you going to do with this information? Are you going to keep buying the lie? Or are you going to make a choice that actually protects you? Because the truth isn't on the label. The truth is in the data, and the data is damning. One final question remains. If bottled water is this bad across the board, what should you actually be drinking instead? At the beginning of this video, we asked whether that plastic bottle you paid $3 for was really pure, clean, and safer than tap. Now, you know the answer. It's not. A $20 filter pitcher saves you hundreds of dollars per year and eliminates daily exposure to contaminants that accumulate in your body over time. The bottled water industry survives because convenience feels easier than change. But easy doesn't mean safe, familiar doesn't mean trustworthy, and expensive definitely doesn't mean pure. The data is clear. The choice is yours. So, what shocked you most in this video? Was it the arsenic in premium brands, the microplastics in 93% of bottles, or the fact that most bottled water is just marked up tap water? Drop a comment and let us know which brand you'll never buy again. If this opened your eyes to what's really in that bottle, hit the like button and subscribe so we can keep exposing the truths that billion-dollar industries don't want you to know. Share this with someone who still thinks bottled water is worth the money, because they deserve to know what they're actually drinking. The bottled water industry won't tell you the truth, but we will. Stay hydrated, stay informed, and maybe just turn on your tap. Thanks for watching. And remember, the truth isn't always on the label, but it's always worth finding.